가서 아니 당기 고도 아니 다지 파바제르시 코랑기 디 symbolize 말해 디 아니 주주 사게 탐지 얘기 인지 참았죠 어르스 인지 참보 the become the form of deity. Chenrezig
So as I said earlier, in terms of the symbolic meaning of the noble Avalokiteshvara, Chenrezig, Avalokiteshvara is considered to be the embodiment of the great compassion of all of the Buddhas of the 10 directions, arisen in the form of a deity. So in short, Avalokiteshvara is a symbol of great compassion.
For activities, for qualities and for activities and that and Chenrezig namnedi chade ore Chenrezig.
And then in terms of the 4 activities or 4 qualities that Avalokiteshvara embodies or engages in, it is the 4 immeasurables, the 4 limitless ones.
Chenrezig ta chambada inji gawa tanyom de Chenrezig chayore. The Namgyungi ma Chenrezig shedu zane chamba ninji gawa tangyums xie yunju zane kurim dabdi dindich yongdi yaradi nyamlen chebe kablia ane ya nyamso lembe kurim dabdi Namgyun tangyum ngela tangyum thomar nyamso len dinema chigi
when the 4 immeasurables are explained, they are explained in the order of love, compassion, joy, and impartiality. That's the usual order for their explanation. But in terms of their practice, the usual order in which the 4 immeasurables are practiced begins with impartiality or equanimity and continues on there in the usual way or in the same order as the explanation order: love, compassion, and impartiality. But in the practice, in the context of practice, then impartiality comes first.
Dona, the nyamle sadi susugi. Nyamlen chenge susugi. Ta ji nyamnyo sena dado. Susugi kandar the chowasana, the feelings of me. That digidi the dungwar choye in Dusane. Ta tambu Chenrezig and tambu nyamle karchena susimlia penchawada. And that's a casual. Susimla devano, Karayavina. That is also sad, man. No need to follow the words. Some of that Korim do did it. Sigi Korim Dawas came into some sort of.
But when we ourselves approach the practice of the 4 limitless ones, without having any previous exposure to these, we can simply follow our own inspiration and our own sense of what we should start with and what order we should approach these practices in. So no matter what we choose to start off with, the main point or the most important thing is that we should choose one of the 4 immeasurables and choose one of these practices that we get a sense of benefit from for ourselves. in terms of benefiting our mind, or in terms of accessibility, feeling a connection with the practice. So we should feel the freedom to choose the order that makes the most sense to us. We don't necessarily have to follow the traditional order in this case.
따지당기 땅 아주 미진 않을래야 지게 미카셰 지 수술이야 지 타니버스는 자도 수술은 제가 전부 해야 돼봐 안지 지 수술 셈리냐 저기 가르쳐지 셈타니버 해야 돼버스는 자도 야나지 초분두시에로지 세운두시 전부 해야 돼 근데 영어 쓰그래 다나 신기 안 가시 근데 미세 수수 근데 미세 잡아 매봐 저 초분 잡아도 셈타니 없이라면 되는데 망고 영어 쓰그래 안 가시 아주 수수 셈 나눠야 지배 디 가서다 셈데서 막아야 되지 셈을 막아봐 안지 셈라 막아야 돼 근데다 미 근데 영어도 알아 진짜 미 다가다지 아주지 가서야 돼 다니엔 파르마섬으로 자다 니엔다 안 파르마스도 자네 시다 자다 니엔 잡으시다면 다 근데 기타 지금 뭐뭐지 영어도 알아
In terms of the sentient beings that we relate to in the context of this practice and in our daily lives, there are, of course, sentient beings that are close to us, sentient beings that we feel a connection with and some affection for, and some natural love and appreciation towards. Also, there are sentient beings who we don't have any special connection with, we don't have any special familiarity with or feeling for. And then, of course, there is the third category of sentient beings who we don't like all that much, who we have a little bit of a difficult time relating to. So, in general, we can speak of these three broad categories of sentient beings, which in traditional language we call enemies, friends, and those in between.
지금 변은 교랑 friend 교랑기도 초보 양수 될래야 교랑기 지가주에 제번은 신지 수수 다들 다는 신샤오르서는 자신자담 다는 샤오르서는 다디즈 갈라 가버렸어 maybe theoretically maybe it's possible technically impossible somewhere but this 갈래야 돼 이내야다디 인지비 야지야도 되는 신지 소고사디 디 녜섬리아다 가르주제 first steps 나도 조치슈디 게치슈디 지 가르주에다 마줄리아다 가시 미가시 데제 소소 제바 타녀와야 되고 가시 데제 타 롱와야 되는데 건 technically somewhere that the tone device tone 타니리 용 ngui ni su tor yung gu ya re de du sa ne tele semje chegwa ro ji 시작해 민도 삼등은 도스 이나 내가 치슈디 가르쳐 되었잖아 디 수수의 초보야 시들 제번는 아주 여기 야부 제번는 시지 수수 다텔라 더즈 야부 제 모토비네야 베이직 섬으로다지 시제 차네 가르쳐 들이야 자들이야 지 참바든 제외 삼바 자완이니 매바 된듯이 매바지 차과디 드다디 개치슈지레샤
Of course, the four immeasurables are practices that have an aim of increasing our loving kindness and compassion towards all sentient beings, friends, enemies, and those who are neutral, or those who are in between. You might be tempted to kind of idealize this and think that, well, the goal is then in the end to treat our enemies in exactly the same way that we treat our friends. Well, in theory, that might be possible, But in practice, it's not really possible. And we don't need to set that kind of a goal for ourselves. We don't need to set up a goal of treating our enemies or those who we have difficulties with in the exact same manner as we treat our friends. But rather, we can take a step to gradually increase our loving kindness and compassion toward those who we have difficulties with. So we can see what first steps we need to take. So in a practical sense, in our daily lives, there will be sentient beings who are more close to us, and there will be other sentient beings who are more distant from us. We don't need to worry about that basic fact so much. The most important thing that we should try to do is try to avoid a situation where we have absolutely no regard, absolutely no affection or love whatsoever for our enemies. That is a basic starting point that we can try to work towards.
From looking from very basic situations. 하장기 가르르다 시제 차네 삼동아지. 아주 심지어 탐제 랑게 년이나 랑 자이나자. 아주 자년 가야면 버르지. 니지 임베나다 강강로 지 대화 된대요. 동해 된대요. 다들 거나 진짜 desire 진짜 간달지. 예. 초나이 디도그 초아에 되는데 심상만 지고 차대. 제가 진짜지기 very basic 가서다 situations and 다도 야는지 하장다 시제 차네 아주 심지어 상으로 당념세는 다도 상으로라디 대화 토야기 장왕다 토당 예대비치 동해 대학이 장왕다 토당 예대비치 they have right some did you 되지 did you image 아주 지송체 과지 아주 규십체 과지 다디 did you 삼동 과디 당념사디 시제 삼동다로 did you 인사 삼동.
So this brings us to the first stage of practice, which is equanimity or impartiality. Basically, equanimity or impartiality looks at things from the perspective of a very basic situation. And that very basic situation is that all sentient beings, no matter whether they are our enemies or our friends or neutral beings, they all have a desire to possess happiness. They all have a desire to be free from suffering. So from the perspective of that very basic feeling, all sentient beings are equal. So this is the first acknowledgement of the practice of equanimity, starting with that very basic reality. And then from there, cultivating further the acknowledgement and realization that all sentient beings have the freedom and the right to enjoy happiness, and that all sentient beings have the freedom and the right to be free of suffering, cultivating a sense of deeper acknowledgement of that fact and respect for that fact.
It's okay. 다 이미네야. 그 베이직 단계시에는 신기. 고라 시제 차네. 에너지. 대화 된대요. 봐. 동해 된대요. 봐. 다 딘디지 미지 이버디. 아주 제는 좀. 그런 베이직 the right senan다도 베이직 가서 그런들 톱단지 해버들이야. 아주기. 배 가르쳐야 돼. 구셔면 체. 델리양 아주 다지 지통 매버 체나 된 적음도스. 주네버 체들라 렌지 잡는 적음도스. 이내한다 간다. 그러나 베이직 라이드 아주 단동형 구셔 체.
So even in the context of an enemy who does us harm, we can bring this contemplation to mind. We might have an enemy or a difficult sentient being who has done harm to us, and we might entertain the thought of taking revenge upon that person or giving that being harm in return. From one perspective, a mundane perspective, it's fine for us to want to get back at them. There's nothing forbidden about that thought per se. But from the perspective of the contemplation of equanimity, the basic reality that this sentient being also has a right to enjoy happiness and a right to be free from suffering, it's not really okay for us to completely disrespect that basic reality. It's not really okay for us to completely disrespect and fail to acknowledge this being's right to enjoy happiness and right and freedom to be free from suffering. And from that perspective, wanting to take revenge on someone doesn't really make sense.
draw me by Chigwa. And the Jachas Sheven on some Didu soy with Simjin with Chigwacha. That dinner and draw me by Chigwa. Tindrigi, Shize Chan, also some Chigwa in big. Tawa Sonandi as you catch which is the catch shadows.
So from this basic perspective of being human beings, the same as our enemies, from an even broader perspective of all of us sentient beings having the same basic desire of wanting to enjoy happiness and wanting to be free of suffering, we have this basic, we have the same desire, the same feeling, and respecting that is very important.
Kaisana Zabri and Doliaji, Churu German among Wedava. Dana Singi Daji Netaji Miri Jamada, Dana Singi, traditional Jamada, the Demawe did some, Nazu Shize Chane, she draw me, but Jigwa, Simji, but Jigwa in the Veki. Kashueda, Jigur Gitar of the Chonan of Shida Yomido, the Divni, Delia Chikashre, the Tower about Drip chair. And Digi, as some of the Pinsu Jilia, Takadaji, Churi Chadam, Chadan Chimbo Chadam, that Digi Mabuji on the
These days in the world, there are so many different groups. There's very many different spiritual traditions, many different types of people. And sometimes we forget that we're all the same in this very basic way that I've just described. We forget that basic sameness, and that acknowledgement of this basic sameness becomes obscured. And as a result of that, we fall into attitudes of bias and also attitudes of attachment and aversion.
Then the Jiggy, Gunyum Gatawa, Tangyum Sonar Yevina, some non necessary fear down, doubt down, that you meet that you meet me, part of non necessary fear, the doubt, the Mambuchi, Renshing Shituarji, Pentorism, Tegadus, Maraledi, Pentorop.
If we have, however, if we can remember this basic reality of the equality of everyone, if we can have impartiality in this way, then fear and doubt will not be as necessary as they were before in terms of the basic connection that we have with other human beings. If we have an impartiality that acknowledges the basic same desire of everyone, then fear and doubt will
다
naturally
너는
be pacified.
진짜
And this has been my own
땅념
experience.
세나자도 꾸념 정 아주다지 가르다지 타 미카시에 타니버여지 섬타니버여 미카시 섬타를 뭐 진짜 용거래 강갈로 지 초보스샤 강갈로 초보스 투야 돼 갈라 하우스자로 가시에 kon 소수다 디즈양 가수다지 가시 시가 경부에 되면 나 디즈 조고서 디스가 하고 드네 바당 양인지 대체 딱 쟤는 야예배 소치 드네 용이 알아 다 간다야 다 이제 섬타 니린 세난자도 다 레버 치중사의 연구래 이내양 시제 차다 아주 당기 시험나시 아주 시제 내당 지고 차려야지 라바르도 퍼리보데 랑게 저우이메 윤생기 아다고 동해 총나야 총 양참상 아주 동해 용화 쇼었음 된거로 퍼리보데 저우들 다 코란 동해 총나 sometimes we make a wish somewhere that 코란 동해 총나 아무도 없어 이내 did sometimes 지당 쿠란 저우 임베 윤세 쿠란 네바 체베 윤세 땐 다게 셰브는신 텔량 아스 네바 체베 텔랄 렌 체과야 지야르디네 쿠란 저우 임베기 one part is the enemy 이내 basically is a human being somewhere the 인주산티 윤세 때네 아주 딜이야 respect 해야 돼 not totally like a denial.
So it will happen that some sentient beings are closer to us and others are further away. And we can't just be pretending that we're going to be friends in a literal sense with all sentient beings. That would be very difficult. Furthermore, there are some sentient beings who have very harsh character, very harsh personalities, and it might in fact be better for us to keep ourselves at a distance from those sentient beings. So closeness and distance with regard to our feeling toward others, closeness and distance with regard to our connection with others, having those distinctions is fine. But what we should try to add to the mix is this acknowledgement that we are all the same in a basic sense in terms of our wanting happiness and wanting to be free from suffering. And so in the case of enemies, if someone else does us harm, at least we can have this basic acknowledgement that they are a human too and they also want to be happy, rather than only thinking negative thoughts about them, such as if they suffer, that's fine, or in an extreme case, we might even wish suffering upon others. We might think to ourselves, oh, it's good if this sentient being suffers. So having impartiality can reduce that type of attitude and bring us into more of a general acknowledgement of the basic humanity of this sentient being and an acknowledgement that we are the same as them in a very basic way. So when we have a difficult sentient being, one part of them might be that they are our enemy or a difficult sentient being for us, but the other part of the situation is that they are basically human. And with the practice of impartiality or equanimity, we come to respect that basic fact more and more and not deny it.
안 대신도 당기 권수시반나시 시제차는 고주 대화 된도에 봐. 동안 된도에 되지 desires 나다도 지 통일 wish도 지에 인사 디 균제되네 아주 지 참바된 인지기 산 셴래야 참바된 인지기 삼바께과 균제인데 시제잖아 고줄 드리지야 인사 디 균제되네 아주 참바된 인지기과 지사래.
So it is because of this basic sameness that we share with sentient beings in wanting to be happy and wanting to avoid suffering that becomes the basic reason why it is reasonable to cultivate loving kindness and compassion towards sentient beings. This basic sameness that we share is the main reason, or the basic reason, why we would want to cultivate loving kindness and compassion for sentient beings.
당기 권도 주변에 신기 참바된 짓사데 지 소소리아 지 미신다를 강해를 제 뒤 소소리아 임팩트 연구협이나 신의 지 도난체대 알로지 신의 지 가서요 삼동아 지 용대 알아보지 야나 란다 잡아예버서 란다 잡아예버 진짜기 대바에 미든젤이야 강에 총비나 신의 도나치대 버르지 마도지기 드린 주산에 나주다지 노르소 신세스므로 아주 참바든지 예데비 에너지 럽첨으로 가첨으로 드리지 매위 주산에 to the end nobody is helping you somewhere 다지 라네 자와 챙겨 말아 그래서나 수수 현례야 제외 somebody 지 voluntarily somewhere 다지 미신다야 로버치아 삼바당 에너지 제외 somebody 야게 마담 인주산에 다 되게 미상만 찍어도 차지 타마텔이야 소소레 주 에너지 자와 쟁겐당 안다는 신기 지 큰순 제아디 명조대 알지 라고 가르쳐 상황을 interdependent so the circle of the tradition going on is
as I noted before, without the difficulties of others having a direct impact on us, it is often difficult for us to feel genuine concern about others and their suffering. And without having or feeling a direct connection toward another sentient being, it's difficult for us to have a sense of concern about what they're going through. And without this genuine sense of concern and connection, we're not able to develop a quality of love and compassion that is vast, expansive, and powerful. And if we continue along in that way, practicing love in that way, then in the end, nobody is going to be helped, not even ourselves. What we will find in the end, that the love we receive from others also begins to decrease and decrease, because the love that we are extending outward to others is not genuine and is not increasing. So if the love that we try to offer for others isn't born out of a genuine concern for others and a genuine sense of connection with others, then because the nature of reality is interdependent and everything goes in a circle, then the love that we receive in the end will also decrease and decrease if we keep approaching it in that way.
exercise 다디지 참바든지 든지 소소하게 삼바난 신지 든지 이용미용 섬으로 다지 든지 용 투미투브르지 아주 최다체 든지 배주샤데 개침샤.
And so to avoid that from happening, we need to approach loving kindness and compassion as a training, and even as similar to a form of daily exercise, something that we actually have to test and expand the limits of on a day-to-day basis. To see, in the same manner of exercise, is if we can take our loving kindness and compassion a little bit further, to make it a little bit stronger, to test it out on a day-to-day basis, and try to grow our loving kindness and compassion genuinely in this way.
다이네 아주 통말지 잡아든 니지 냠내 체외거리 아주 expectation도 줘. 당연히 심지어 함제를 잡아든 니 심 기부지 somebody 가르쳐지 잡아든 니 심 야부지 계기 인사마로지 대지 somebody 다지 기부지 당 야부지 야 드레지긴 안에 in the good situation somewhere that the thone ji somewhere that it is gala karresana chawadin ji alla korji karchwe really take sort of karchwe da ji exercise chara da labardo and the ji chawadin ji mityumbi cho digidelia je face cheche deso nyamdo 따지 참섬 당원에 깔아카부여비네 단도 수수기 따지 페이스 체체 딘디지 트레이닝 시작하되 개심으로 만도 맞아 도마 expectation of 잠바드 미상월로 베 야부여 되번로지 되는 게 잠바드 니지 삼바드 기부지 제네 미상월로라 따지 기프트 인더지 되긴 삼으로지 베 삼로 기부로지
At the same time, we should be mindful of any preconceptions we might have about our training in loving kindness and compassion, and any expectations we might have of ourselves. We might set out with a nice motivation to say, oh, I'm going to practice loving kindness and compassion. It's going to be so great. It's going to be happy when I extend loving kindness and compassion. I'm going to give sentient beings a great gift of love and compassion. But then, if we set out with that kind of a little bit of a naive intention, what we might find is that when we come face to face with the obstacles to loving kindness and compassion that are also present within our own minds, then that's more of a wake-up call that's not pleasant. So we should be aware that loving kindness and compassion and training in loving kindness and compassion is not always easy, and that we're going to face obstacles that are present in our own minds as the antithesis of loving kindness and compassion, and we're going to have to get to know them too and train with them. So loving kindness and compassion isn't always a happy, pleasant thing. It's not always 100% cheerful in terms of training in it and developing those qualities. So we should be realistic in terms of our expectations.
Very comfortable. Expectation. Comfortable. And just so expectation to check the order. That between chalky, gang end of Chumbecola, die on some others. Tang somebody to come to some die on some others. That Kasuaji give up the chair. Could you in an expectation, waiting for something, somewhere that's very comfortable, very successful. That Lamali Chilipshin be blessing me, very successful, very comfortable, and the Chisajorba. Tindigily waiting, Majuji Tindigil, Riguche, could you in a Tindigi Yaki, the water chase Devinza. Ding Azu the Yamlen this Yagemdra. Yamne Yagem one draw one. Azu Rawadi this King or Rawajam, waiting for Midincho, King or Rawajam. And they can the same Chikarre, Susu Takarre, when they touch exercise. retraining realistic training 총부임이나 아니 신의 정아서 야개용 토야요지 드리지 인사를 삼탁도
The main reason why our practice gets stuck and we don't have a sense of fulfillment or enhancement of our practice is because we have expectations that when we do the practice, things are going to be comfortable and there's going to be no obstacles. We expect our practice to be pleasant and to induce pleasant feelings. And because of that expectation, when our actual experience turns out to involve feelings that are unpleasant, and when our actual experience turns out to involve some meeting up with some adverse conditions, we immediately give up. We lose heart. We think, it's not happening. I'm not going to be able to do this. So in that case, we're erroneously waiting for success in the form of superficial comfort. And with that type of attitude, we might request our gurus or teachers to bless us so that we have a nice practice, a comfortable practice, and so forth. But that's just an attitude of inaccurate hope. And through that attitude, our practice does not improve. If we really want our practice to improve and to deepen, a more skillful attitude to take would be to actually hope for adverse conditions to arise, to actually hope that our experience will challenge us, will reveal to us our own shortcomings, and that we will be able to meet those difficulties face to face in an open and honest way, treating everything that arises as an exercise in the further development of compassion. If we take that type of an attitude, then we will be engaging in realistic training. And if we can really practice with that type of attitude, then I think that we will see the genuine flourishing and genuine success of our training in compassion.
bodhisattva chenju sambasa da boji the heroes the bow richly that the encouragement, full of encouragement. Training of Cheche, Semdelia, and the country Yaget Tanche, and that just so king in the Mitumbi Chog, ya, Jibumeva. The Nijiki Takanda, the Jibumeva, the Bows and Andrando, the Jiki Kandar Mintop Tandeva, the Digi Haji, and it's Chenrezig. And the Kibu Yaboyana, the Samal Bowrata, Chibarata. 다이네 다 강에 준비걸이야 보응어마데 강에 준비걸이야 고라가지 뉴버를 된토나 다듯이네 보응어마로도 차리요 인두산에 디균센데네 아주 다시 encouragement 과디 엔지기 다지 참여다 대조대 지금 아주 상마지 가로 heroic Karmapa ji the Tamalogy Bow Chen and Lamsanti that don't do the legal bows had encouragement. That Jidan to Susimlia and the Rang Rala Ishi Chimboruji and Rang Ralia at the ne give some strength to yourself. Did you catch me?
So, in traditional Buddhist language, those who embody fully the trainings in the four immeasurables are called the bodhisattvas. And the Tibetan name for this word is Changchup Sempa. A Changchup meaning bodhi or awakened, Sempa meaning heroic or courageous being. And the reason why the bodhisattvas are heroic or courageous is because they have a quality of strength of heart, and they are not afraid of engaging in the trainings of loving kindness and compassion. They are not afraid of adverse conditions arising in their training. And because they are not hesitant or afraid to face adverse circumstances and difficulties, they are therefore brave. They are therefore heroic. If everything was pleasant and happy all the time, it'd be no problem for everyone to be heroic and brave, because there's not really too much to be heroic and brave in the face of. But what really makes a person heroic and brave is that they are heroic and brave in the face of adverse circumstances, in the face of challenges, in the face of difficulties. And so the main quality that enables the bodhisattvas to be heroic or courageous in the face of difficulties is that they give encouragement to themselves, they trust themselves, and they are able to give strength to themselves.
나들이 인주산다 지선이 가르디 제레스기다 곰 즉 가르 곰농자 다 지드린다 제레스기 남바바 제레스기 다 랑기 지위줄 다 제레스 곰체 제레스 곰니 다들이 샤들이 요래 냠네차 다 대한 조데 랑가랑리아다 encouragement there.
So tomorrow we will proceed with the meditation transmission of Avalokiteshvara, which is basically a method of visualizing this bodhisattva, Avalokiteshvara, above the crown of one's head as a method for giving oneself encouragement to train in the qualities of the four immeasurables.
And 다디 탑시지래서 가르에서는 다 런이 전주 삼바 니임벌 몇바체 다지 런 전주 제레스 임베 몇바르체 안데 안 제레스 스르사네 상계 탐지기 닌지기 다 누바르식 간다 드네지기 다지 닌지 정수 닌지 등이를 지메 인도사네 다디 소소 tenderbi niji dangi de kursong sambarche dili che yusan rang rang le yabe nyuba chambru jinje rang rang nido chambru jinje da namju ngazu de gilu sarjo lelo da gilu re da ina da kap de yusan ngazu da ji su lia ji sing semla sing de da nga chunju sangge tamji gi da ji niji dangi rangi sambarche 드리지 닝도 지진도 사네 아주 대지 남주인다 면라와르지 다 대지 심쇼를 봐야지 아주 연구로 봐. 다 가시를 연구한다. 가시를 지진의 연구 이기만 안에 다 남주인 아주 근데 삽삽 맞아요. 삽삽이라 맞아요. 아니 미신아 지 삼성 컨트롤랑 삼성 차도랑 들치러 봐. 다이네 제레스 임비 몇바 체사를 지라. 다 차도랑 디 대보면도. 제레스 인양 차도랑 제 kinda 네드 한테 대즈 정신 대즈 가서지. 차도랑 저민도 삼을지. 안 컨트롤 체나 제레스 인데바 그냥 컨트롤 란데바 노서 matching the ta kana ju su liya da ji give some the superpower some ju su de ji de ru cha ru chi da de shi ru chi dan do na ji su gi ji gi lu nyom le ru ji de mo nga ma de chi ji ani su sem liya sing de ji nie ji da ji che tu re sam ru chi ani ji su ji ji gi yin sam ru chi de ji gi ning la top ji yin gwa de ge zum sha yi sa.
So the practice of Avalokiteshvara is a skillful method for encouraging ourselves toward the practice of compassion. One visualizes Avalokiteshvara above the crown of one's head, and one comes to further relate to Avalokiteshvara through the meditation and visualization practices in a way in which one eventually identifies with Avalokiteshvara, thinking, I myself have become the great Avalokiteshvara, the embodiment of the compassion of all of the Buddhas, the expression of all of the energy of compassion of all of the Buddhas. And by thinking in this way, that we ourselves have become such an embodiment of compassion, we are essentially giving ourselves further encouragement, and we are allowing ourselves an opportunity to slip out of our usual habit of laziness and self-discouragement that assumes that we can't have great compassion. But rather here, through identifying with Avalokiteshvara, we are giving great encouragement and energy to our minds, which basically says, I can do this and I will do this. And so the practice becomes a skillful method in this way. And some people, when they do the practice, find that they can connect with this type of inspiration. Some people might not be able to connect with this type of inspiration through this particular practice or through this particular method. But in any case, for those who do connect with it, the practice becomes a method by which we can transform our usual habits. Because when we're identifying ourselves as Avalokiteshvara, we might have an ordinary, mundane habit of becoming angry or becoming jealous at others. But once we've taken on the identity of Avalokiteshvara and saying, I myself am the embodiment of the compassion of all Buddhas, it's not so comfortable to get jealous at someone. It's not such a good fit to become angry with someone. So in this way, the practice of encouraging ourselves by identifying with Avalokiteshvara can be a powerful way to transform our usual mundane emotional habits. It's kind of like giving ourselves a superpower or a supercharge of compassion. But in the end, it's a skillful method to encourage our minds and to slip out of our usual habit of laziness. We give ourselves encouragement that thinks, I can have great compassion, I can do it, and I will do it.
Da drin rishimda drin dusane da dringi chiru chalya da tezam duchresha da ne sani sani da de mutu ne da semeshi kwari nare da digo da di Chenrezig
That's about it for this afternoon's teaching session, and tomorrow during our sessions we will continue with our discussion of the four immeasurables, as well as the meditation transmission of Avalokiteshvara.